The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Keep your mission on your mind and your mind on your mission. This is Mission Minded with Michael Coleman.
Welcome back to another Mission Minded. Keep your mind, your mission on your mind. He is Michael Coleman, the CEO of the Heart of Alabama Food Bank down there in beautiful Montgomery, Alabama, serving 35 different counties. Michael, first of all, you've got that freezer, man. That freezer must be pumping and jumping, brother. It's been hot. It's all I've been thinking about lately is that brand new refrigerator you got last year. That thing must be blowing and stowing.
It is the idea of how much food we have to keep at 0 degrees or below.
Yep.
In weather like this and the heat. The electric bills are not cheap around here.
So have you ever have you ever had a situation where you've had to turn down food? Or do you have agencies? I mean, you run like a fine old machine, so you kind of know what's coming in and what's going out. But have you had a situation, and I know you've been talking about this Tyson thing a lot, and chicken obviously has to be refrigerated. It can't get warm at all.
We have to freeze it. Yeah, I mean, it's a certain amount of days has to be frozen. Yeah.
So do you ever have an opportunity or a chance to pick things up at the last minute? Do people call you and say, "Listen, we got something that's on a 3-day shelf. Can you get it out real quick?" Or do you ever have something shipped to you and then you have nothing to do with it?
Yeah, sometimes it happens. A truck may come by and go, "Hey, we've got an extra 3 pallets of this, and our company just wants to donate it." That's usually what they do instead of trying to bring it back. But sometimes we'll get a whole truckload, and that's really why we built that large freezer, because when you don't have enough room to move stuff in and out, lots of times, even if you get stuff at a great price or you have a large donation, you can't accept it because there's just not enough room. And so, we ultimately ended up spending $1.8 million on that freezer, that building, to bring in 8,000 square feet of capacity, but well worth it because we have capacity like nobody else in the state of Alabama in terms to be able to do those kind of things. And it gives us lots of flexibility, especially like we talked about with getting these donations from Tyson, picking up truckloads, even though we're having to take them and have them processed. At another location. Sometimes we've had as many of these loads as 8 truckloads of frozen chicken that were waiting to be either distributed to other food banks or distributed out to our agencies. We never could have handled that and thus would have lost that donation.
Wow.
From Tyson if we didn't have the new freezer.
Yeah. Can you talk a bit? We've talked about this a little bit, but I'm going to make my 20-year-old son watch this. He turns 20 in October because anything that is like an hour past this expiration date, he's out. And I'm like, and I have to mark down on the refrigerator. Like if I make a roast on Monday, he won't eat anything over 4 days. And my mom's always come from she always said, smell it. If it smells good, it's still good. If it doesn't smell good, and you can tell, I mean, just take a whiff and you can, if it just smells a little off, don't eat it. But if it still smells good, more than likely 99% of the time it's still good. But like I have a gallon of milk in the fridge because I have to buy so much milk because him and his daughter or his sister, my daughter, drinks so much milk. And it was the 23rd. And on the milk, it said the 22nd, and he wouldn't drink it. And I'm like, dude, that is just the sell-by date. It has nothing to do with when it expires. And again, open it up, take a smell of it. If you don't want to drink it, don't drink it. But can you
many years ago, people, and I don't know if the date was actually different. I don't know if it was a best if used by, but that's what it is today. The only thing we don't have any leeway whatsoever with past dates is with baby food or baby formula. It is, if you don't move it out by that date, it goes in the garbage. Okay. It absolutely cannot. So USDA governs all of that product. And so what you're saying is very true. Like, and my wife is the same way. Once it gets past the date, she thinks, but every product that you get in the store, those are not expiration dates. Food does not expire like that. If you have a dry food, lots of times on bread or chips or things like that, if you've had it too long, what begins to happen is it begins to get a little stale. And so you can tell it doesn't have quite as much freshness as before.
But you can still eat it.
Perfectly safe to eat.
Yeah.
Now, the USDA says as long as you get meat frozen before the expiration date or the sell, I mean, I just did it myself, before the best if used by date or sell by date, then it can stay frozen indefinitely as long as it doesn't have an occasion to thaw out and then refreeze. You can't do that. There's all sorts of safety.
Which means you could have it for years. And I remember my mom and dad going down to our freezer. You know, we used to have one of those big freezers, and we'd go through the freezer like once every 3 years. And there'd be deer meat from 1984. There'd be hamburgers, hot dogs, things like my mom. And it's still, you can still eat it. It may not taste very good. It may be,
right.
It may have.
So that's usually that's right. That's usually what begins to happen is it's like, if we have meat that's frozen and we pull that meat out, we're looking for, is there any kind of frost on that meat in terms of, has it penetrated the packaging? So is the meat discolored because of anything like that, where to look funny? It rarely has a bad smell or anything coming out of the freezer, but it might have a discolored appearance or a wrapper's torn where the meat itself has been exposed to the cold. We dispose of all of that. My general rule is I've said, I would never give out anything that I would also not give to my own mother.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult for people to overcome the idea, because I will tell you, in our college pantry program, we give out a lot of, they typically want the cookies and the chips and just the snack kind of stuff. And we are concerned less about nutrition when it comes to college age kids. Because they're just wanting something on their stomach, and they're not going to eat a bunch of fresh vegetables and things like that. So, but there was a whole question about that. We've had to continually educate people on the best if used by date. And all we're saying is this: when a grocer looks at a product, that date is on there so that then they know, okay, they're guaranteeing it to be a certain quality, a certain texture, a certain color, a certain everything about it, consistency up until that date. And that's why they say, look, you need to sell by that date. But the day after the food does not expire, go bad. When you have canned items, there's some canned items that USDA says you can still safely eat up to 18 months past the best if used by date. Peanut butter can go like 3 years.
Yeah.
Now, what happens with the peanut butter sometimes is the oil will rise to the top, and when you open it up, you got to stir it all up. So those are the kind of things you see, and people go, "Oh, well, this has gone bad." No, it's just the oil's risen to the top. So part of it is we just are not properly educated on what those issues are, what to look for. Some things are obvious. If I get bread and I've got stale bread, if bread's meant to be fresh, is hardened. Look, I'm not going to use that. That's some common sense type stuff. Like you said, if it smells bad, something's happened, I'm not going to eat it.
My mom used to freeze bread. I'm like, dude, I mean, that's of course, she used to also wash plastic silverware. So, I mean, it's just like,
well, some people put bread in the refrigerator. It does help it stay fresh or a little longer. So there's all sorts of techniques, but another thing to really keep in mind for people, and we super emphasize food safety, because the last thing we want to do is affect somebody's health, especially when they're at a very vulnerable state where they're needing food assistance, or they may be dealing with a health-related issue. We don't want to exacerbate that by giving them something that may spoil. So we're really emphasize that and really track our food. But it's even under the odd situations, usually the most people are going to get is, oh, that just left me a little queasy, or that left me, if you did eat something that maybe just wasn't right, like when you talked about leaving it in the refrigerator. I mean, most people will tell you, okay, if it goes in the refrigerator right away, where you didn't leave it on the counter for 4 hours and put it in the refrigerator, if you wrap it up, put it in the refrigerator, you're guaranteed just going to be good for 2 to 3 days.
Yeah.
But like I said, some people have different tolerance levels, and some people open it up after a week and still eat it. We don't recommend that necessarily, but like you said, when you open it up and if you can't tell what it is, you don't know how long it's been in there. Yeah, it's always better safe than sorry to dispose of it. But yeah, it's very tough sometimes educating people and getting them to understand. They just can't get past that date. That date says, sell by or use by this, but it's always a sell by. Like with milk, they'll sell it all the way up to like the day before, oftentimes of that date, especially if they only have a few gallons left of that. And the expectation is you go home, it's sold by that date. Now it could be good for another week past that date.
I hope my kids never see how I make smoothies. Because my moms, we used to get bananas. We wouldn't waste anything, and I mean the bananas would be black, and my mom would make banana pudding or banana bread, and it tasted fantastic because you can eat a black.
I was going to say that's what those bananas are used for. Yeah. So
like when I put blueberries and blackberries and raspberries and stuff, as long as there's not mold on it, and it's stuck in the back of the refrigerator, and I pull it out, and I mean they may be chewy or they may be just I throw it into the blender, and you got yourself a killer smoothie. I mean it's
same thing with cheese. If cheese gets mold on it,
cut it off.
Cut the mold away. And if there's no mold, it's perfectly safe to eat.
Mm-hmm. All right, I got some emails here. You ready to fire these up? As people know, I don't ever share these emails with you, and I don't do that on purpose. But sometimes I'll go back. We haven't done emails in several months, so we got some really good ones. And this is a business show, so there's a lot of business questions here. And some of these questions may be really outside your realm of expertise, but it certainly would be fun to talk about and something we could talk about as well. Barry in Homewood wants to know, please ask Michael Coleman, by the way, says in parentheses, love the show. Please ask him about home ownership. How did we get into this position? I had a home for 18 years, and then I had to sell it because I went through a divorce, and I did everything I could to save it because I knew it was going to be super hard to get back into a home that was remotely close to that house because I knew it was going to go through the roof. It used to be you used to always rent because it was a lot cheaper than owning. Now it's more expensive to rent than it is to own. And so not only are you not getting the house you want, but now you're renting and paying even higher rent so you can't save for that house down the road. What do you foresee based on what you've seen in your experiences? I know that the interest rate needs to come down, but I mean, it just seems like, a $420,000 house is nothing to look at anymore. It's kind of like, I can't afford a $420,000 house right now, not particularly at the interest rate we got. But what's going on and how do we get to this point? How do we get to the point where we have so many people that are not only living on the streets? San Francisco is unbelievable, right? But also having so many people making six figures that can't afford a home.
Well, so there's all sorts of factors depending on what part of the country, and I certainly am not a real estate expert. Part of this is just my own personal experience and talking with others, and just seeing some national trends. You go out to San Francisco, it's been that way for decades, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that everything they have is bought up by people who can afford it because you have, the valley there with all the big tech players. And so there's so much money there. And so it's one of those things to where demand can't keep up with supply. So prices, I mean, that's kind of market forces. Mm-hmm. But I've seen some of the just shacks that, studio apartments, going for $4,000 a month, $3,500 to $4,000 a month. Things that in Alabama and most people find ridiculous. Yeah. Now, having spent a few years in Birmingham and kind of know the layout there a little bit, I know that the same kind of, I think, dynamic happens in Homewood and Vestavia and some of the nicer neighborhoods out there. We were looking at homes and we were in Homewood at one time. My wife and I looked at a home, and it wasn't that it wasn't a nice home, but you could just tell it was a home that had a lot of age on it. It was probably built in the 60s or 70s. It was not that big, but it went for $400,000 to $500,000. And so as Homewood becomes has always been a desirable location as it relates to downtown, but it also has its own culture. And the economy is doing well, investments are doing well. It's part of the inflationary thing that comes along, and you've got all this money, and a lot of people want to invest in real estate. And so Homewood's a desirable community, which is exactly what the people of Homewood want it to be. Because in theory, it's like if you want to build up and have an extra nice community, you want people who, I guess, or have the ability to maintain a home. One of the things I was concerned about was I buy a $500,000 home, even if I could possibly swing it. Then the question is, well, what do I do when it turns around and needs a new roof? I mean, I could get in the door, but good gracious, how do I maintain a house, with that kind of demand? And then you get into these HOA agreements, and you're constantly having to do work and limited and on and on and on. So I started looking at, there was even some articles out within the last year that goes, hey, it used to be the pattern was, the American dream was, you would start out as a young couple and you would rent an apartment because nobody could go right into a home. And this is what my parents did. They lived in an apartment and then they rented a small house, and you wait till you progress up and you try to get some savings. And you may start having kids along the way, and then you're able to save up for a down payment, and boom, then you're able to get that starter. They used to call them starter homes. Yeah. But I've seen starter. You can't get where the starter homes in Homewood and stuff like that. They don't exist because everything's so expensive. But that used to be how it worked. And then as you progressed in life, in terms of your career or your capacity to make money, or as your disposable income became greater, as your kids leave the home and you're kind of done footing their college, which you're going through right now, and some of the other bills, then you could get the lake home, and you could invest in your dream home or whatever. That was just kind of, if you will, the way I envision the American dream and traditional, how it kind of worked. Yeah. And all of that's been thrown off. I have a friend, a director who works here, and she makes pretty good money, but she talks about how, even renting a house now is as much as somebody's mortgage. And so I hear a lot of people, especially if they've had issues in the past where they don't feel like they have the credit to get a house, they say, oh, they can come out better renting. No, the rental industry is through the roof. And again, it's because there's not enough housing out there. So the demand is really high. So you end up paying mortgage rates for houses that, that a few years ago, 10 years ago, maybe would be 30, 40% less than what it is right now. And then market forces drive that. What concerns me, especially working in the nonprofit realm, especially working with a lot of people, when you deal with homelessness, and there's all sorts of issues affecting homeless people, but there are legitimate housing crises in different parts of the country, to where if I just go to work and I'm making in Alabama a living wage, let's say I'm making $15 an hour. Yeah, I mean, there's not tons of money left over, but you would think I'd be able to live on that. But you're typically going to be stuck. Even if I can get a job making $15 an hour, I'm going to be living somewhere in a less desirable neighborhood. Yep. Typically, there's going to be more crime. There's going to be landlords who are not responsive to the needs of the repairs of the home or to the safety of the neighbor, all those kind of things. And so, my heart goes out to a lot of people starting out in life, because there's all sorts of these barriers. And now, me and you, we're 58. We're later on in life. We're on the back nine or maybe I should say the back
we're tipping them off back 9. We're on number 10. We got plenty of time left. But we're on the back 10.
Is that 10? Is that what you're calling?
We're on number 10. Yeah, we're on number 10.
I kind of feel like on most days I'm around 13.
Yeah, I'm number 10. Let me tell you something. And listen, I had to sell my house, and then again I went through divorce, and I was like, please, and I tried to. The problem with my house is I had my ex on the title. If she went on the title, I would have been able to stay in it. And I knew that if I got out, it was going to be difficult. And because I went through a messy divorce, my credit was in the toilet. I got to the point, Mike, where I was just like, this last place that I'm in right now, the rent came up, paying $2,000 a month. My mortgage was $1,250 for a place that was a lot nicer than the place I'm living in. But I was in it for 17, 18 years, and I was just blessed to find a place to live. I got 3 kids, right. And I'm thinking to myself, if I was single, I probably would have called you and asked you if I could live in your basement and give you $1,000 a month to stay with you. I mean, I had friends saying,
I wouldn't let you do that for $1,000. Well, I'd have charged you. I'd have gouged you, man.
I mean, I had friends of mine saying, listen, man, for $500-600, you can come over here and use everything you want. And, if that's what it is, but I said, I get 3 kids
think about this, Tony. People are not, you don't see near as many apartment complexes going up that are lower income. In other words, that are designed to accommodate this demand.
Yeah.
You don't see houses being built like duplexes or outside of like government housing and things like that. And so, we're getting to the point in many cases to where it's not, the homeless crisis. What I've said for many, many years is it's rare that you're going to go to Birmingham or Montgomery and find a family who is not battling addiction, not battling mental health, generally is ready and willing and able to get up and go to work every day, that they're living in a car collectively, a house and kids. But we're getting to that point, and that's probably what the emailer was suggesting was, hey, it's, where do we go from here? If somebody's not investing in that lower income, because then it just becomes the older, lower income neighborhoods is the only thing you can, and that's where the higher crime is. And it's almost victimizing people at times. I don't necessarily have the greatest solutions, but I certainly recognize it's a serious issue.
What a lot of people aren't talking about, and I find this really interesting in this part of the country, is the contingency of Latino culture that is moved in, and obviously is within 4 or 5 years, we're going to have more Latinos living in the Birmingham or Alabama than we are going to have African Americans, which is really hard to believe because, and Hoover even had rules and laws. You could only have a certain number of people living in a homestead.
Right.
Latinos, and God bless them. I mean, they do great. I know that the people from India do the same thing. Their families, they'll put all their families in one home. There'll be 10 to 12 people living in a 3-bedroom home, which is great. And they're saving money. They're doing all these things until they got enough money to go out and then buy homes. But by doing that, you have more people taking up less space. And by looking at that, it appears to be a good thing, but it's not, because then you got people wanting to get out and buy homes, and because they could save all their money because they were living with 12 other people, they can afford a $400,000 house. Do you know what I'm saying? So, unless you want to live in that type of culture, which, and again, that's their culture, that's fine.
Sure.
But seriously, you drive through, and I've got Latino friends of mine. My 2 boys are Latino. And I'm like, how the hell you guys keep buying up all these places and turn them into restaurants? There's more Mexican restaurants. He's like, because we live together and we save our money and we work hard. And I'm like,
and the family works. Hey,
and it's like, it's true,
That's very true. That's very true. You also have the problem, if you think about it, with families, these failure to launch of, we blame it on Gen Z people or Gen X. I guess when it started, you couldn't kick people off their couch, and you're 30 years old living in your mom's basement kind of stuff. And some of that, I would say the majority of that are other issues unrelated to this housing issue. But there are legitimately people who are out there who go to work every day, who come back and still live at home, either because they're trying to save money or maybe they're living at home and they're just going to end up taking over that home when their parents, if they have older parents or grandparents. I mean, there's just it's so many unique circumstances, and so many variables, I should say. It's really tough sometimes for families.
It is funny because
you've been through that this past year when you had to change houses.
Yeah, I mean, our dads, our generation, 18, you're out of the house, 20, 21, whatever. Obviously, it changed a little bit there. Now you have parents asking their children go to college, stay at home as long as you possibly can, save up your nut. You can help around the house a little bit. You can spend a little money on us and groceries and things like that, help out with gas money, and then pocket away. And then at the age of 27, 28, when you meet that special someone, you guys want to go off and buy a house, you got $100,000 sitting in the bank, which it was a little different for us. All right. Info at TonyCurryRadio.net, info at TonyCurryRadio.net. We're running long already, and I don't care because I own the radio station. We can go as long as we want. But there was an email question that I definitely wanted to get to today. And it's from Stacy and Brad, also in Homewood. This is written from Brad. And Brad says Stacy doesn't know he's writing this email.
Okay.
Says that we started a photography business about 10 years ago. And we worked together. We lived together. Obviously, we're married, and the business was going very, very well. And then we hit COVID. And COVID was like, okay, what's the big deal? We already work together. We're working out of our home. Everything's good. And then he said something happened during COVID where we just weren't gelling. And again, this is a 3-page email. We weren't really gelling. We weren't really working together as we normally would. And it just didn't seem like we weren't helping each other as much as we possibly could. And then when COVID stopped, he said she had the idea of perhaps maybe one of us going out and getting an office and working apart a little bit. And he's just wondering, did COVID do that for a lot of people? It seemed like, I guess the way I read it is it worked really well when they could decide they wanted to be and live and work together. But then when they were made to live, to work and to work together, it got more difficult. Did you see a lot of that during COVID?
Yeah. And especially you have to understand with the whole dynamic with husband and wife working together can be difficult. I mean, to me, even under the best circumstances, but some people are just great fits at it. They do very well. They each bring strengths to the table. I'm sure that's what this is. But then COVID had an effect on all sorts of different industries in different ways. And then, like you said, being forced to do business. Well, my wife and I, we had a boutique. We have since sold it. But we had a boutique, and then we were at home a lot and trying to do that from home and trying to navigate that. And we were about to lose our minds at each other and at the business. Incredibly difficult. I wonder the questions that I would ask, it'd be impossible for me to know if getting a separate office would be beneficial for them as a couple. You don't really understand just from an email what their true issues are. Mm-hmm. It could be that it's had trouble starting the business back up again, and that frustrating. That can be frustrating. I think I would only operate outside and take on the cost of another office, me personally, if I felt like it was necessary for the business,
okay,
and not necessary for the relationship. I don't know how if they can go out and afford an office and they can make good use of it, and they think that also helps the relationship. Yeah, absolutely. But he was wondering, is that common? I said, yes, absolutely. Because when husband and wife, two people are living together and then you're with each other all the time and you don't get a separation, even if you're running a business together, mm-hmm. You typically have different responsibilities. Somebody's in charge of marketing the business. They're out meeting with customers and all that. And you have somebody that's doing the technical piece, developing the pictures, answering emails, all that kind of stuff. So you're really not there all the time. But when you had to do that under COVID, you are right there where little things like you can hear them chew their lunch and you want to stick a fork in their neck kind of stuff over that. Those kind of things start to take place. I don't know how well the business is doing now. If the business was not doing as well, and so you still kind of feel yourself stuck, I really would look out and investigate some of the things that other people have done with the photography business. One in particular that just came to mind because she's one of the best in this area, in the Montgomery area. And we're having a photo shoot done for a magazine for the food bank. And they mentioned that she used to do family things or beauty shots and all that. And she really just transitioned into photography for children, for infants, because what she just discovered is that her niche is she takes these beautiful pictures of the children, but then she follows that child as that child grows up.
Oh, that's cool.
And so she develops an ongoing business. It's not like the old Sears where everybody would go
smart. Yeah.
For that forefront. Oh, it's very smart. And you think, because people won't spend the money on themselves, but they will spend it on their children and their grandchildren. And I know that because I've got the same picture of all four of my grandchildren at different times sitting in the same tub with the same rubber duck at the studio that did that. And so it's real special that we have all that. So, I would say if he's got the money to do it, and that works for them, hey, knock yourself out. If not, I think I would try to specialize the business and try to create an environment to where one person you could get the separation by the functionality of what you do so that you're not.
I would say the first thing to do is call a marriage counselor. Is what I'd say. If they met at work and they've been working together for 8 years and really well, and for something happened during COVID, which was 4 years ago, and you still haven't figured out why you're kind of at each other's throats and things aren't as harmonious as they used to be, there's something wrong. So before you go out and spend $1,000, we just talked about how expensive houses are. Before you go drop $1,000 a month on rent somewhere, and you're sitting there by yourself, where you're used to having a warm body around you and beating some ideas off your head, because that's just going to make it even tougher. You got a new expense that you're not dealing with.
Well, and I will tell you this, and I'll just leave this. I like to be open and transparent about my own struggles in my own life. My wife and I just celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary, and she started going to a life coach because we were fighting so much, and just, we were talking a lot, but not communicating very well. And the life coach has really helped her see both herself and how to best approach me with things that are concerns to her. And it's really helped. Because if you can eliminate that and actually communicate in a way, not communicate in the way you want to, but understanding how the other person best understands the communication, it's really been helpful. And so, I agree. Getting some outside help if the marriage is still struggling, or worst case scenario, one of you gets and takes a different career path, or does something different, and then maybe just helps out in the evenings or on the weekends.
Yeah. Dr. Josh, he loves that life coach thing, man.
Yeah.
He's like, wow. He's like, what happened to the psychologist? Now we have life coaches, because you don't need a degree to be a life coach. You just need,
That's right.
You just need to have an opinion for sure. All right. He is Michael Coleman, info at TonyCurryRadio.net, HAFB. If you want to check out and hashtag that, they do wonderful work. Heart of Alabama Food Bank down there in beautiful Montgomery. Final question here from Jody in Nashville. I got to ask a question because we never talk about music on this show. Your show runs at least 5 days a week on a classic rock station. Jody wants to know, what's the last live show that Michael Coleman's ever seen?
The last live show I went was with a friend. And I will tell you, I'm not a huge concert guy, especially the older I get and just being in all that crowd and all that craziness. But a buddy of mine called me a few years ago and said it was actually in Nashville when Garth Brooks came there live. And he said, it's a dream of mine to see Garth Brooks in person. And he said, I got 2 tickets. Let's go. I said, hey, come get me. Let's go.
Killer.
And we did, and it was awesome. It was a great time. And so it does. If I don't go regularly, I do have an idea or a dream, if you will. I'm thinking about, found out the Eagles are going to be playing at the Sphere. U2 was playing out there in Las Vegas, and I've had it twirling around in my mind. Maybe
you should go
and watch the Eagles because I love the Eagles. But also see them at the Sphere. That would be kind of a neat trip.
I've had a couple friends of mine that seen shows out there, and it's the most amazing thing. He said it doesn't matter who's playing out there, just to be in the Sphere is unbelievable. To see the Eagles play that would be just amazing. Really,
I agree.
Great stuff. Thank you, my friend. Also, listen up for our other show called Bite by Bite. We do that every single day, or every single week, should I say. It runs every day right after this show as well, right here on the TKR. And, of course, wherever you get your favorite podcast, you can check that out. That show specific to the Heart of Alabama Food Bank. We do that show as well right here on the TKR. Have yourself a wonderful week, my friend, and stay cool.
You as well, my brother.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.